And now let's bring you our second leading story this morning. The number of people starving across the world is increasing at an alarming rate, according to the United Nations Agency for Food, the Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. 98% of over 800 million people across the world that are chronically malnourished are living in developing countries. It says in Africa, biotechnology or genetic engineering has been touted as a plausible solution for the continent's food needs. Now, while some countries have allowed limited commercialization of technology, especially with transgenic cotton, most have flatly rejected what is known as genetic modified foods, that is GMOs. In Uganda, the country's president, Yoweri Museveni, has on 2 occasions refused to sign the National Biotechnology Bill into law. We'll talk about this in a moment, but let's first hear more on the World Food Day, which was marked yesterday, Wednesday, October 16.
The number of people starving across the world is increasing at an alarming rate, according to the UN Agency Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO. 98% of 800 million people that are chronically malnourished are living in developing countries.
The state of food security and nutrition in the world report tells us that total number of undernourished people in the world is increasing. More than 820 million people are going to bed hunger. It is important to note that while the total number of hungry people is increasing, as the world population is growing quicker, the hunger rate is falling.
Poor diet has also led to at least 672 million suffering from obesity, with 38.3 million children below the age of 5 being overweight.
But hunger is not only about undernourishment, it is also about having access to enough food in quantity and quality to meet the nutritional needs of people for healthy life. That is zero hunger concept. Second, overweight, obesity, and its associated non-communicable disease are also on rising, affecting over 2 billion people globally.
Hunger and poor quality of food are a major concern in addressing malnutrition. In a report released on Tuesday, UNICEF said about 150 million of children are stunted or too short for their age, while millions more are wasted or are thin for their height as a result of malnutrition.
Plant biotechnology, that is the artificial vegetative proliferation of plants, is it the answer to malnutrition in Africa? To discuss this, Dr. Andrew Kigundu now joins us by Skype from the Uganda Agricultural Research Organization in Nairobi, Kenya. Good to have you with us, Doctor. Why exactly has there been so much debate on commercializing biotechnology in Africa? And why do you think countries have been so reluctant to roll it out despite there being so much information?
Biotechnology and the genetics involved in it, that complexity has led people not to understand the specifics of the products of biotechnology, and they have ended up, having more superficial ideas and superficial treatment of the issues. For example, in crops and agricultural crops, there are hundreds of different crops. Each of these crops have different varieties. The uses of these different crops, the way we use them, some we use them to make fiber, for example, like cotton. Others we eat, staple crops like matoke, bananas, cassava, potatoes. Others are seeded species like maize, rice, beans, for example. Now, the diversity of function, the diversity of nature, the diversity of use, the diversity of cultivation methods, and how we process all these crops the diversity of technologies that can be applied to improve these crops, the purposes, the methods used are also different. And having a superficial discussion of the debate does not allow for understanding the issues.
Andrew, Dr. Andrew, Africa has faced food crisis and hunger in some of the countries on the continent. Now, the crises are projected to get worse in the coming years because of a changing climate change. Can biotechnology help change the fortunes for food on the continent?
Due to rapidly expanding populations, the natural resources that we have in order to produce food, fiber, and other materials that we need from plants is actually dwindling. For example, agriculture and the practice of agriculture is known to be the highest destroyer of the environment. So if we were to continue agriculture, expand agriculture in order to support food security, we are increasingly destroying the environment. And climate change is making it even worse, which means that we can no longer do agriculture the way we did it before. And you will also appreciate that in the past, we already seeing a lot of differences. People used to do shifting cultivation. Right now, you cannot shift to another place because all the land is owned and everybody is getting smaller and smaller pieces of land, which means we must increase the efficiency. We must increase technology. We must increase innovation to make the meager resources sustainable and perhaps even more productive. And biotechnology is one of the sciences, is one of the innovative areas where we can boost productivity while conserving the environment.
Opponents of genetic engineering say the technology will wipe out indigenous crops and food and put poor farmers at the mercy of Western corporations that own the technology. What do you say of these concerns?
The issues around loss of indigenous crops is actually misguided because the farmers themselves, as I told you, are running out of resources. And farmers need some cash. It's the farmers looking for how they can sustain, improve their livelihoods on the natural resources that they still have left. On the other hand, biotechnology can, in actual fact, help sustain these indigenous crops because we see every now and then epidemics of disease that can wipe out all these crops because they tend to be susceptible to new diseases, and when new diseases arrive, they wipe them out. And biotechnology has indeed helped. In the example of cassava, a lot of varieties, a lot of indigenous cultivars have been lost due to devastating epidemics of viral diseases, and we have recently developed them to resist virus disease and therefore sustain their production. So it's not true, and at the same time, the technology can help sustain those indigenous crops.